So a little bit about this site. I'll walk through how it all connects together. The overarching benefit that the customer wanted was a whole home backup solution, right? What that means is at the moment the grid feed comes in to your switchboard, runs all your circuits, right? You might have solar coupled to that, but when the grid goes out, all of your circuits lose power. Now with this solution, we essentially are running the grid in here into the inverter directly from the main switch. This cable runs back to the switchboard and feeds all the rest of the circuit. So essentially, if we were to lose power at this point, the inverter, as long as it has power from the solar array or energy available at the battery units, then this cable will continue to stay energized, which will feed the rest of the house. This is an automated system as well. So if the street blacked out, for instance, the customer probably wouldn't even know that there was a blackout in place. So very, very valuable system. Simple coupling as well. So of the batteries to the inverter. So this is what we call a DC coupled battery system to the inverter, whereas the power is in direct current, DC, and feeds directly into this inverter, which has an inbuilt solar battery charger and discharger. Now it can also take up to 4 strings. I've removed the cover so we can see this here, but it takes up to 4 strings. On this one, we actually utilize the full scope of what this inverter can take. This is a 10 kilowatt inverter, which can surge to 13 kilowatts, right? That's around 45 amps, but it'll run a normal 63 amp main switch on a house. It will run what the power is required for every normal house, okay? The panels we put were double the size of this, and that's because we can actually split the power. We can send power back up to the grid to export, we can run the backup loads, and we can also charge the batteries at the same time. So that means that we can get more than just what the 10 kilowatts is doing here. We can adjust. One of the key components as well that we did is that SunGrow in particular, this set of battery systems do, is we can parallel these batteries. Now that was because each of these battery stacks are modulars. Each one of these is 3.2 kilowatts hours of storage, right? So that goes up to 12.8 and 12.8, there's 25. What we can do is we can actually add 2 more modules to this stack without any rewiring. It keeps the cost down. For the electrician and technical costs, means we can ship them out and we can get a solution very, very quickly. A little bit about the value of this system. And also the setup, because the key here is the design being critical to getting the best possible value over the length of the system. The batteries are engineered to last up to 18 years, but the inverter and the battery system has a full 10-year warranty, 25 on the panels, and they're bifacial as well, of course. But in particular, the fact that this inverter is a 10 kilowatt, with this new rebate that's been introduced by the federal government, what we're seeing is a flooding of large battery systems being advertised. However, say 30, 40, even 50 kilowatt hour battery systems. But most of the time they're only installing a 5 kilowatt inverter. Now who cares, right? I'm getting a big battery system. Well, that does matter, and for a number of reasons, and it will affect your bottom dollar by up to thousands of dollars every year. In potential savings. With a battery stack such as this one, right, we have 25 kilowatt hours here. We're going to be getting roughly around 7 kilowatts of power out of each stack, right? Maybe 6 to 7. So that's about 12, 13 or 14 kilowatts of power. Now, even though it's a 25 kilowatt hour battery, it doesn't mean that we can get all of that out instantly. We might only be able to get, like I said, 12 to 14 kilowatt hours out of these 2 stacks. Now, that's good because we want to marry that up to this inverter. This inverter can output 10, right? So as long as we're above what the batteries can do, below what the batteries can do on the inverter, that's a good thing. Why do we do 10? Well, that's because these are the regulations from Energex, which states that installing just a 10 kilowatts per phase is automatically allowed. We can export up to 5 of that. With the new dynamic exports, we can do up to 10. So you're going to get a lot more there as well. It's a great feature to look into, and it's quite new as well. But do your research on what dynamic exports are. I'm doing a post on that in a different thread. But the inverter can get out 10 kilowatts. Now, this customer has gone with a energy retailer called Amber Electric. Now, Amber Electric's average that they're advertising of repayments in cents per kilowatt hour, feed-in repayments, right, is 27 cents per kilowatt hour. The customers sometimes sees up to 70 cents. One time he's seen $19. It does happen when there's complete grid failure. Now, let's go back to the size of the inverter. Let's say that between 5:30 and 7 p.m. tonight, the customer will get 50 cents a kilowatt hour. Well, because he's got a 10 kilowatt inverter, he can get, for an hour and a half, 10 kilowatts full export to the grid. So he's limited by 10 for an hour and a half, which means that he can pull 10 plus another half hour, which is 5, out of this 25, and he's going to be getting paid, say, 50 cents a kilowatt hour. Now, that's a lot better than getting paid the measly 5 to 10 cents that most people are getting paid on the fixed, the fixed supply, the fixed. Hang on, let me get my wording right here. That's obviously significantly more cost effective if we balance this out every day, as opposed to a fixed connection where we're limited to 5 or less. So if I was to have a 5 kilowatt inverter, I would only be able to get 5 kilowatts out, right? So by having a big battery system, but only limiting myself to a small inverter, means that really I'm limiting myself for getting the actual power out to both the loads on the house and any export as well. So be very, very careful with the design of the system. Make sure, as a rule of thumb, that if you do your battery system, try and make your inverter at least half of what that is. So if it's a 20 kilowatt stack of batteries, try and make it at least a 10. Now, you might have 3 phase, you can go up from there. In this case, we're limited to 10. So this was the best case scenario. There's also, with the new rebate, we've seen a lot of new companies come in for very cheap price points. They're untested, untried in the market, and a lot of the time they over throttle these BMSs, or the brains of these here are called the BMS, the battery management system. And as the name probably insinuates, it manages the battery system when it charges and discharges. That's just so that we can protect the battery with the safety element. You know, with fires and these things that happened in the past, they were directly connected and they had thermal runaway issues and voltage issues, and it would kill the cells. Whereas these things are very safe now. And as you can see, we put on a fire retardant backing, being brick here, away from, you know, any windows or anything like that. It's in a very safe part of the place, the house here. But make sure that with this new battery rebate, if you've got the opportunity, please think very, very closely, or if you can afford a better quality system, spend the money to do that. When we have dabbled in the cheaper end of the market with batteries, we've found that we've had a lot more failure rates. This brand is one of the brands that we do supply. In the last year or so, when we've done about 70 systems of these with batteries, we haven't had one single failure. So spend the extra money if you can afford to, and spend it on quality, and go to a reputable retailer with proper designers that are going to give you this information, rather than pay the deposit and here's a massive battery system that probably isn't going to really work for you. Other things are adding to with existing systems. If you've got that, a lot of the time, you know, customers aren't feeding back into the grid the amount of power that they need, right? So they have an existing solar system, but they're using all the power up. If you put a battery system in, how are you going to charge it, right? These are some of the traps that are in the industry at the moment, where unskilled, unregulated, and complete lack of knowledge in the design area, customers are putting these big battery systems on and they have no way to charge them up. And so how are you benefiting? We need to obviously balance the solar on the roof with the batteries sizing and the inverter sizing to get the best out of the system.